Guess who's back? Back again. B-Dowd's back. Tell a friend. Good afternoon. It is Sunday, December 8th, 2:04 p.m. this time. If you didn't tune in, I had some thoughts on the Barry Odum situation. If you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to do so and keep the conversation going. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do appreciate whoever good handful of you tuned in live during the halftime of the Purdue basketball game versus Maryland. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. But before I dig too deep into that, let me thank my pals, my friends who have come alongside of us to make this all possible. When you're on campus and you're at Mackey Arena and your Boilers have just fought and clawed and found their rhythm, what do? You head towards the fire station. Then when you get there, you turn left and you'll see the blue lights, and then you go into AJ's. When you're in there, maybe you order a pint. Maybe you order some appetizers. That's a good idea. Or maybe just jump right into the main course and you get some Italian beef, burgers, beef, and beer. That's AJ's. I'll tell you what, Adam's handsome. All right. Also, if you need a sweatshirt, a t-shirt, a hat, a platinum pack, if you've seen the platinum pack, it's pretty bad. A retro coach's jacket, a quarter zip with embroidered Purdue logo on it, kind of old timey, got a little bit of retro feel, got some 90s type stuff there. You know where you go? Home Field Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. Enter Boiled25 at checkout for 15% off your first order. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. This game was interesting because I started trying to get ready for this with about 12, 15 minutes left in the contest because I wanted to come to you guys quickly. And so I was like, man, this game's kind of teetering a bit. What happened? Well, Purdue started playing Purdue basketball. Number one, this Purdue team, I keep saying it. I said it to people in person recently, and I've said it on here. This is a year that Purdue is going to have to grow up, and they're starting to grow up. But you're going to see this. You're going to see a little bit of this year, but that deep down low, what you saw versus Penn State and versus Marquette, where you're like, wow, they weren't really in that game. That's a hard thing for Purdue fans to swallow because I don't think we're really used to watching Purdue get blown out, right? But what happens in those games, it seems to me that Purdue gets frustrated and they get outside of their orb, and then they're in a lot of trouble. Well, when they can keep their heads cool, when they can play their game, they're pretty damn good. And what you're seeing this year, the compare and contrast, this smaller Purdue lineup is figuring some things out as we go along, obviously. The starting lineup, you see Colvin and Heidi were back in it. There was an interesting change because they announced a starting lineup that included First, and First ended up being a late scratch, and they put the other in there. I don't know if that was kind of a funny tip of the cap to the Buddy the Elf bit, and today was the Elf Day where they do the food drive at Mackey Arena, and looked like it was very successful from the pictures that I've seen. But the big thing, it was a really successful game because Purdue was able to pour it on at the end. Thanks to Braden Smith really playing a very, very complete game. And then a couple other guys making big plays when you needed them. Purdue finishes, they improve, better to say, 8-2 on the season. Maryland falls to 8-2 on the season. Maryland's a pretty good team. The funny thing about Maryland, when I think of Maryland over the last, decade, 15 years, I think of a team that's always talented, kind of like IU. This year, no different. They got young talent, but they kind of were keeping it together. They were playing a better brand of basketball, I thought, until about that, 8-minute mark, 10-minute mark right in there. They just started making mistakes, and Purdue's defense and peskiness, if we're going to say that, started affecting Maryland. Maryland has a very, very talented freshman named Queen, who's pretty unlikable at this point. He's young, though. I mean, that's the thing. We can chalk that up to he's very young. He was a McDonald's All-American a year ago, and he's a highly sought-after recruit. IU wanted him. Other schools, of course, wanted him, but they were able to keep him there, even though he's from D.C. He responded to the paint crew multiple times, which I always love seeing when a player does that, because that means they're hearing what the paint crew is saying. And if this wasn't a game that looked to be pulled over the finish line, or maybe gave Purdue a little shot in the arm by the home crowd, by the Mackey Magic, I don't know what was, because it really felt like as the pressure started building in the building, Maryland reflected that. And that's probably a direct correlation with a lot of the youth they have on the court. And they did start playing like some of the Maryland teams in the past year where they kind of lost their poise, and that was the difference maker, that and guys making plays. So who was making plays? Well, you had Lawyer. He had a couple key ones that stick out to me. Lawyer had a big lob to Heidi that was in a key juncture, and Heidi made a brilliant cut on that. You had Smith making a ton of shots, really making Maryland pay for really busted coverages on movements where Smith would get just enough space to bomb a three and he'd hit it. Lawyer had a couple threes early in the game. It looked like he might keep pace with Smith for a while, but Smith kind of pulled away in the points department. And TKR, who was really struggling, and once again, kind of a carryover from Penn State, looked frustrated, especially in the first half. Queen and Reese, both of them were really in his business a lot. You know, they were playing a physical brand of basketball underneath. And on top of that, they were doing some things with double teams, and TKR was not playing great offensively. But in the second half, he played really well and was very effective. Purdue made plays, really is the big thing, and was able to bring home a victory. Let's look at the box score, why don't we? Like I said, Purdue wins 83-78. Felt like it was a little bit further or bigger of a disparity in points than that, but Maryland hit a three and had kind of a cheap two right in a row at the end of the game. So a good win for Purdue, make no bones about it, because it's better. I think I called it a bounce back in my thumbnail. But it was really important for Purdue come back, for their confidence as a team and as a unit to come back and win at home. Now you go back to the non-conference for a minute here, as Purdue will play, I believe is it A&M, Auburn, then Toledo? I think that's right. The A&M game, an interesting one in Indianapolis. The Auburn game down in Birmingham, and Toledo back home in Mackey Arena before they get into full swing of the normal Big Ten season. Purdue finishes this stupid Big Ten entry 1-1 like they seem to do every year. It feels to me this is what Purdue does in this the unusual out of rhythm Big Ten games that are always here in December. Let me look at the box score. Okay, enough of the sidebars. Braden Smith, massive day, 24 points, 10 assists, 4 boards, 2 steals, a block, and just 1 turnover. That's a pretty damn good day. And then from 3, he was 5 for 9. I think that's the type of thing you want from a All-American, definitely all Big Ten type of point guard. But good bounce back game for him specifically, because last one, of course, Ace Baldwin was all in his business, took him out of his rhythm, and he needed a big game, and he got one. Let's see, who was guarding him? Oh, was it Rodney Rice? I can't remember. They threw some guys at him trying to disrupt him, and there was a lot of Maryland played drop coverage, and that's a problem generally for teams when Smith gets room to make that elbow jumper and then maybe make the three. But then Maryland tried to adjust it and go over the top of screens, and they started drawing fouls. They had one of their important players, Julian Reese, fouled out with, I think, 6 minutes left, if I'm remembering correctly. That was important, but he wasn't that effective today, really. Derek Queen was the story for Maryland. Very, very good. True freshman, 26 points, 12 boards from him. On the other side, like I said, Cam Heidi seemed to get buckets when you needed him to. He played above the rim, 15 points, 3 boards. I'd like to see a couple more rebounds from him, a pair of blocks. Purdue as a team out-rebounded yet again, 36-34, but the discrepancy on the glass was greater than that early in the game. I think Purdue had, I want to say they had 7 or 8 fewer rebounds in the first half, if I remember that correctly. And Purdue was shooting the three really poorly in the first half. And they got into a rhythm there in the second half, finished 34%. Not good by any means, but as badly as they started, makes sense. They were 9-26. On the other side of the ball, Maryland shot 42%, just edging them out 11 of 26. And Purdue shot the free throw well. If you hit 76.9%, 78%, 77% of your free throws, you're going to have a pretty good day. The way Purdue plays, because they draw fouls, 10 of 13 from the line. Another big stat. Huge stat versus Penn State. Purdue turned the ball over, 14 times in the first half of Penn State. This game, the whole game, 8 turnovers from Purdue. Massive for Purdue to take care of the ball, and very, very important. Fletch Lawyer, really solid game. 3 for 7 from 3, 12 points, 7 boards. Kind of shocking there, but he was opportunistic. He also, like I said, let's see how many assists did he have. He had just 1 assist, and that was to Heidi. But he was playing heady brand of basketball. He didn't look like he was forcing things like he was versus Penn State. I know a lot of Purdue fans love the fact that he'll attack the glass, but a lot of times he needs to keep his head up and look, okay, I got a 6'11" dude in my face. This is gonna be really hard to make the finish there. I know everybody has talked about this. I don't know why, but the Lawyer's physique is minorly changed, but he hasn't changed where you can absorb a ton of contact. So I don't think it's the wisest thing. Trey Kaufman-Renn, right behind Braden Smith in points, 21 points, 8 boards, 2 assists. Again, in the first half, he looked visibly frustrated, but in the second half, he really, really played his game off the bench. Some interesting things happened, especially in the first half. I think it's really Paint figuring out this roster. That happens. So he played Burgess early when Kaufman-Renn got early fouls. He had 2 fouls early in the second half. Paint made a bit of a gamble and put Kaufman-Renn back in much out of schedule, out of rhythm, what he usually does, and it paid off because Purdue kind of fought their way back in. Early in the second half, Purdue was down by, I think, 4 to 6 points, 4 to 7 points multiple times. And Purdue took a big lead at one point after a big run in the first half and let Maryland storm back in really, really quickly, really easily. Jakari Harris and CJ Cox also played significant. Let's see, they're not showing me the minutes yet on this website, but it was neat to see. Cox played the 2 or the hybrid 1, whatever you want to say, alongside Smith for a little bit today, as Painter still tries to figure this out and tweak things. Caleb First had a couple really good plays on his elf night, but he also had a play, and I talked about this in the Barry Odum wrap up or reaction, better word there. But First finishes with just 5 points, and he had another bucket, a dunk that was missed off the back of the rim. Also, another guy that had a dunk off the back of the rim was Miles Colvin. Miles Colvin played a really solid game. Let's see, he only shot the ball 5 times. He was 2 for 5. But man, let's see how many boards he has. 7 boards again. And that's the key. Again, these guys are finding their groove, if you will, getting buckets or getting rebounds or getting steals, whatever. And Colvin has been a guy who's been a consummate role player. I think he's always ready to do something bigger, right? But he went 0 for 2 from deep. Heidi went 1 for 4 from deep. But I would say the roster, I think we're going to keep seeing this up and down type of thing, and they will get better as the season goes on. And I'm excited about it, but I really would implore Purdue fans to say, let's give it this season. Let's enjoy the process. Even if the process is somewhat frustrating at times, they're going to lose another game or two when they get just beaten up and they get out of their rhythm. It's going to happen. Teams have seen the way you can beat Purdue is putting a lot of pressure on Smith, starting in the backcourt, and then really trying to beat up TKR until Purdue can figure out how to counter that. When a team is capable of doing that, and when a team is very used to that, like Auburn is going to be mercy. That's a game that if I don't fear basketball games, I'm not afraid of them. But that's a game that I'm kind of like, I don't look forward to seeing that. But what is it going to be? It's going to be a barometer of how good Purdue really is at that point. But the process is going to matter this year. Purdue is going to get better, and hopefully they don't drop too many in a row. That's my biggest fear. If they lose a big, a painful loss like they did versus Penn State, followed up with another loss, that's something that can mess with especially young guys' confidence. But we'll see. Good to see Burgess in there in the first half though, and he was quiet, but good to see him in there. And I think it's smart for Painter in the long run to get those guys more minutes in the first half, just to keep guys fresh in the second half, because Purdue really relies on that starting 5. All right, on to your comments. IC says boiler up. Patrick Gottschall says choo choo mothers. Yeah, right on, man. The old slogan back. Adam P says hello again. Good to see you, Adam. Zachary Welch says Purdue breaking a press at ease brings a tear to your eye. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and it's kind of an underrated great thing about I think PJ Thompson's thumbprint on this team is the ability to break the press so easily. I said that's ironic because when Thompson was running the point guard, running the point, Purdue struggled. Purdue struggled to break the press. Now obviously Braden Smith is pretty damn good at it. Lawyer is good at getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He doesn't try to beat it with the dribble. And they're really a lot smarter on that. So that's a very, very good point. JP Boiler says, good bounce back win. Right on. Need to be in verse says, nice win. Didn't realize Maryland was rated so highly on Ken Palm. Less concerned about the first half now that I know that. They're a good team. And they had just come off of a big win versus... Darn it, can't remember. But they had a sizable win right before this, had some momentum coming into the game. That's a good win for Purdue and a really good showing for Mackey Arena again. That's one of the things. Mackey shows up and shows out on these Sunday games. It just seems like that's something that historically Purdue's been great on Sundays the last few years, and here we go again with that. Let's see. Thaddeus Grubaugh says, good to be back. Adam P says, like Christmas come early, a BS broadcast twice in a day. Yep, and you've gotten I would say we've gotten to get together a lot of reason to do it, right? If there's a reason to talk, I'll try to get on, talk with you guys about it. And we've had plenty of reason the last 2 weeks. Absolutely. Let me continue down. IC says, love seeing Brady looking for a shot. Yeah, he was. And he had a heat check there at the end, which was kind of funny because he's got to stay away from fading away off 1 foot from that deep. That is just, I mean, if you can hit that shot, it's not next level. You're an alien, right? Because that's not even something that the great 3-point shooters in the NBA look to do. There's not a lot of fading back. A lot of guys do that weird 1 foot kind of push shot almost from very deep. But Braden Smith has done this a couple of times where he's fading back off 1 foot from three, and I'd rather him get rid of that. But it was a heat check, and he missed the rim. If there's one black eye on the whole game for Smith, it's that. But, man, what a great game he had. Pat Gottschall says, if my math's right, that's 26 straight wins when we have a 10-0 kill shot. So that means when Purdue has a 10-0 run, I think that's what you're talking about. And the good thing about that second run, because I think the one in the first half was like a 7-0 run, if I remember correctly. But it felt like the game could tip towards Maryland, and Purdue showed a lot of fight. Again, this is good to see. It's good to see. Zach Welch says, looking forward to a handsome hour regarding the Odum hire. Yep, we'll get one Monday. But on the onto basketball, the Big Ten doesn't have an elite team, but man, there are some really good teams. Conference champs probably taking 5 or 6 losses. Yeah, generally what the Big Ten champ has 4 or 5 losses, right? But I think you're right. 5 or 6 is probably a good prediction. There are a lot of teams that are incomplete right now that are going to get better as the season goes on. Michigan State is showing a pulse. Their athleticism that I think we thought we'd see last year is showing up right now. Wisconsin is showing some bright spots. Obviously, I mean they're highly ranked. It's a tough conference as it always is. But 5 or 6 losses, I think it's a good guess. I don't think you're going to see anybody run away from the conference like Purdue did. Was it last year or 2 years ago when they really got out to that sprinting start? Nobody could catch them. Regarding the handsome hour on Monday, I don't know. In fact, I'm almost positive that Anish will not be there. And it should be our last handsome hour of the season because it's going to be football centric. And then we'll get to basketball beat every week. I think that'll be the last handsome hour of the season, but it probably will be just Jay and I, if I'm just guessing right now, which that's old school. That's the way we used to do it. If you've been here around here for a while. Motor City Boiler says, thought they might bring Odum out at halftime. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people thought that. I wonder if the contract is not finalized yet, or maybe they are working out the details on the assistants. I think it's the latter there. To me, if you want to look at the tea leaves, you could say that maybe Bobinski was, or the Purdue people had already contacted Odum's people. Maybe. I mean, one thing he talked about, if you're gonna do what I do and overanalyze, is he talked about it's not going to be an offense first guy. He doesn't have to be an offense first guy, is what he said in that press conference a week ago. That to me makes me think that there was a leader a week ago, and it wasn't a guy who was the apple of my eye by any means. But that's okay. This can all go very, very well, and I can be wrong, and I will admit when I'm wrong. I don't think this is a bad hire. I just don't think it's the best possible hire. That's my big thing, and so I explained that in that very, very fast, quick cast reaction to the Odum announcements, the official announcements, I guess, that came out from the media, the national media, that is. Metal Scholar 007 says, hey, everyone, got caught cooking on the grill, catching up on the last 5 minutes of the game. Okay, yeah, you're going to enjoy that. Yo says this team is a huge disadvantage because of First has never developed into a potent threat. I think this team has a couple things that aren't great and aren't on its side. Obviously, the injury of Jacobson was big because there was a lot of talk about Berg taking a big step this year, and it's a lot to ask a guy to, boy, it's like when you follow a legend as a coach, right? When you're the next guy, that's a tough thing. But I would say following a legend as a player, like coming in right after Zach Edey, expectation is high because we're used to seeing a system run a certain way. Berg also being gigantic and being physically imposing. I think a lot of people thought maybe he could step in and we could see a big jump in this season, and I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, it's he's struggled to stay out of foul trouble, and he's gotten a lot of minutes. But he had a couple nice. I think if I remember correctly, I think he had a couple bunnies today that were pretty good. His size really mattered. He had, what am I thinking? No, there we go. He had one. Okay. He had a little baby hook, if I remember correctly. So I'm not completely losing it. There's just a lot to learn, as I think Jacobson was ready to plug in and grow up in front of our eyes, but that hasn't worked out, obviously, for the injury reason. All right. Derek Mulligan says, hit a $7,800 parlay on a $10 bet. Thank you, Purdue, for making this day great. Wow, that's a heck of a day. Now, see, if you're like me, which you're not because you're betting on sports, but if you're like me, you right away put half or 3/4 of that away. I put that into a nice S&P fund myself and watch that money grow. That's just me. Just me. I've never made that type of money in a day, though. But the losses are the things that a lot of gamblers don't want to talk about. But that's a pretty dang good day. So congratulations to you, Derek. Matt Keller says, nice day, great for you. Ed Albanese, the Gummy Bear King, tells us, reports online say we hired Odum. Is that true? Well, Ed, I already talked about this, bro. So the reports right now are Purdue is set to hire. That's what I've seen by every outlet. So I don't know if that means like we were talking about earlier, is the contract not finalized? I don't know. Seriously, check our feed and you'll see my thoughts on that. But yeah, Odum is, I'm pretty sure this is done. Like, last night, I had all sorts of indicators coming at me from different people that are closer to the program than I am, obviously. I'm just a fan, just like you. So when it started coming out, it's not officially, but when it started coming out from bigger outlets this morning, I was not at all shocked, not surprised. Let's see. Metal Scholar says the Odum chatter appears to be true. Absolutely. Jason Ron says, so reports are showing Odum. Walters came from his, I talked about this idea that Walters came from the coaching tree and he came back in. I tweeted that. Check that out. It's a funny, interesting tweet. You've obviously thought of it, not you, but many people haven't. But it's a very, very interesting cyclical nature. The tight nature of college football coaching is shown in this process. Pretty wild, and it's not many years that separate the whole process. Very interesting. Ancient Astronaut says, boiler up. Mohill93 says, now that I'm on the right video, can a Purdue guard play some defense, please? I think this is something that is part of the reason they're struggling so mightily. These athletic guards are eating Purdue up a little bit. And I think they have the capability. I think the biggest thing Purdue's guards are struggling with right now is physicality. Painter talked about this coming in the season, and the bigs are. It's an entire team problem. But embracing the physicality of the game and being ready to, I guess, being figuratively punched in the nose, maybe literally sometimes, doesn't look like Purdue is ready for that every game. So there's a lot of things they'll improve on, in my opinion. Shan Cox says, this season is going to be a test of the coaching staff. I'm confident in the coaching staff. Yeah, so am I. But in my opinion, you just have some things that you've got to have a guy. Somebody has to emerge on this team that becomes the guy who is really okay with seeing his own blood. And I mean that literally and figuratively. Like Gillis. Gillis was that guy that if you need someone to get on the floor and grab a ball and get floor burns and get elbowed in the face, Gillis had no issues with that, right? And the reason you have to have a guy like that is because when things are getting tough, you have to have a guy that's tougher in those situations. Purdue hasn't shown that yet, in my opinion. So, yeah, I agree. Let's see. Jack's Boiler 24 says, what a gritty game. Good to see Smith's shots fall. Heidi and Colvin playing above the rim. No doubt. That's awesome to see. Those guys are great athletes. I would say they're two of the best athletes we've ever seen in a Purdue uniform, and they happen to be on the same team, which is awesome. Cox and Harris, ball handling looks good and will improve. Completely agree on those guys, too. Remember, true freshmen. There are very few cases of Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith around in Purdue's history. Guys coming in and getting plugged in as freshmen and playing in perpetuity, pretty amazing. But they have spoiled us. There's no doubt about it. Even if you're not a big Lawyer or Smith fan, I've been more critical of Lawyer than any other of the Purdue players in the last few years. Last year, I talked about that. There were times that he frustrated me, but he is rock solid this season. He has been rock solid. He still has some discrepancies like everybody does, but he's been very, very steady. Let's see. Matt Keller says Odum has been ranked in the top 25 3 out of 6 years. Also experienced. We won't break the bank for him. Also experienced, and we won't break the bank for him. I think Purdue paid a lot for him. I think the terms will come out, but I think Purdue put down some money. We'll see, though. He can also bring his guys over the transfer portal, and that's not so true either. Look at UNLV's roster. Tons of seniors in places of importance. So if Purdue gets a quick sugar high, get that hit like IU did from their JMU guys, if Purdue does it, they are going to be there. There are some juniors on there, but that UNLV roster is incredibly experienced this year. Lots of juniors, lots of seniors. I got to tell you, I cannot stand the way college football is designed right now. I've said this before, but this is the right thing to do right now in this era because it's so hard. Your roster gets so depleted when a coach leaves. Generally, Odum has a sales job with a lot of the guys that are entering the portal, obviously. But you almost have to have guys that come over in a big bunch to have that immediate impact, similar to what Jeff Brom did coming out of Hazel's era, but he did it such a different way. He brought over a couple from Western Kentucky, but then he had a couple guys transfer in that were in key spots. I think cornerback and there were two that, if I remember correctly, that really were important places. Wide receiver. They got JUCO guys early in Brom's time. That was very, very important. But they looked at JUCO. Right now, it's like the model that looks to work is what Signetti did. I mean, brilliant. No doubt about it. Akoldi says, Brett McMurphy said it's done. Okay, so there you go. It's not just set to happen. The contract's set. John Hawk says someone needs to go tell First he's 6'10". I would like to see Caleb First set his jaw a little bit. I think he's a really good basketball player, and I keep waiting for him to take the next step. Remember, that's a Mr. Basketball. That's a guy that's super talented. I say he's incredibly athletic. Not every Purdue fan agrees with me. He's got a good, quick first step. He gets off the court quickly. But he's not always anticipating the contact that he's going to get. And obviously, in the Big Ten, you're going to get a lot of contact when you go up to the rim. He needs to be ready for it. I agree. I agree with some of that. But yeah, it'd be great. It would be if he could get that part of his game dialed in, and I think he can. I have a lot of faith in Brandon Brantley as a coach, as a position coach. So if there's a guy who can teach him, it's him. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. Zach Welch says, not basketball related, but really tough draw for the reversible jacket Indiana Notre Dame fans. We'll talk about this on Handsome Hour because I looked a little bit at the draw of the playoff. So you've got IU and Notre Dame playing. I love it. And maybe it'll make them address the fact that these are actually both college teams that they choose to wear their jackets for, and it should be somewhat embarrassing. They're not embarrassed at all. They're not going to be embarrassed about it, but at least it'll be in their face. But the route for Notre Dame, if they get through IU, if you look at it, it's really favorable, and it's almost like they got a, in my opinion, they got a little bit of favor. Georgia's a lot more beatable than they've been in past seasons. So they'd play IU, then they play Georgia, and then they'd play Boise State or Penn State. That's a pretty nice route to the championship, if you ask me. Will they get past Georgia? Probably not, but it's a pretty good route. We'll talk about that on the Handsome Hour, though. I know Jay will have some thoughts about that, and he'll have some thoughts about Scott Frost being brought back to UCF. That is awesome for Justin. Brother Ted says it was perfectly reasonable hope Berg might step up significantly this season, but it was equally obvious to see once it wasn't happening. Yeah, he's not. Like I said, big shoes to fill. It's hard. I don't want to get on a guy like that. He's fought, and I like the guy a lot. Like his dad, he's come on here, I think. Interacted with him on Twitter. He's not what I think Purdue fans were hoping for. That's true. Regardless who you are. Akoldi says, Missouri fans love Odum, even though he got fired. Shows what kind of coach he is. Players coach like Hope was. Yeah. And also UNLV fans, they love Odum. And they should. 9 and 10 wins, 2 straight seasons. That's pretty awesome. And maybe, like I said, maybe Missouri gave Odum a bad deal. I don't think there's any doubt about that, actually. And that's a problem with Missouri's athletic department. But I also think I think the reason he was canned was the fact he had an NFL quarterback, and they weren't as good as they should have been, especially in that year 4. 6-6 team with a future. I think Locke was still there, I believe. Maybe he was already gone, but still, you had a guy who was starting multiple seasons, and they had that 8-win season, which is good. But I think they wanted more. So we can debate this. I think it's debatable. But his resume is solid, if nothing else. I think that's not debatable. Very solid resume. He's had some pretty good bright spots. I just liked a couple guys more for the fit at Purdue because the offensive angle. Let's see. Metal Scholar says, other than Odum's first year in the SEC, he has coached every time to bowl eligibility. He's 0-3 in bowls. Coaching to bowl eligibility in the SEC is not easy. Agreed. Hopefully he has a good offensive coordinator and he brings that guy on staff. And yeah, we talked about Marion. He is absolutely imperative, in my opinion, to bring with the staff. Ed Albany says, does Berg need more time, or is it done for him? I don't think he's done. I'm not saying that. I hope nobody interprets it that way. I just think he's not the next guy in the line of Purdue great centers, in my opinion, which isn't bad. That's not the end of the world, because right now Purdue is a really good guard heavy team. You've got guards and wings that are really, really good players, and TKR, who's really, really good player. And he's showing it, by the way, game in, game out. TKR is there. He has been consistent. He's been more consistent than anybody. But also, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's just Purdue has relied so heavily on the big man being the, kind of the quarterback of the offense, right? It goes through him, that I think it's an unusual thing for us to not have a big man that is, number one, a mountain of a human, but the second thing, that dominant. And it's not just, because you can go back, we can go further past Edie, obviously. But, okay, this is good information, good data. And this is the problem with doing this many shows in one day. Motor City Boiler says Purdue football just tweeted they hired Odum. Okay, great. Very official. Breaking news. Right here. But thank you for bringing that up, Motor City Boiler. Matt Keller says, you think UNLV recruits will decommit and come to Purdue instead? Depends on the situation. A lot of guys don't want to come that far away, and I think UNLV probably has a lot of regional recruits, I'm guessing. Harder for smaller programs to bring guys across the country, but who knows? They also had that really, really interesting situation. I think we talked a little bit about it in Twitter. I know I did. Remember, they had the quarterback that was lied to by the collective, who started the first 3 games. They started 3-0. Their offense looked great in that go-go offense. And then he backed out because he didn't get what he was promised. I don't think that's the best thing to bring in, because a lot of people say he quit on his team. But I would argue, if you were promised a certain amount of money in your first job, in your first big job, and they lied to it, you're well within your grounds to quit. I really believe that. The hard thing in football is you're abandoning teammates, and I'm aware of that. The one thing that I would keep an eye on, this is a big thing. This offense is predicated on a quarterback that can tuck the ball and run. Oh, looky here. Purdue has a guy right here that is pretty good at that, named Ryan Brown. And Purdue has this. The question is, can Brown, number one, is Brown attracted to this offense? If you look at it, the system, he'd be a very good fit based on what I understand of it. Short, quick passes, triple option read. It takes a lot of reading, though. And so Brown makes quick decisions. We do know that. So, but I think that's a guy that's in the portal already that I would think would be very attracted to this system. We'll see what the coaches have to say to him. Tarnaz J says, Berg did well. I'd agree. Jason D says, I agree that Mizzou's athletic department, actually the entire university administration as a whole, was a clown show while Odum was there. Yes. It doesn't bother me at all that he was fired from there. Metal Scholar says, okay, I'm going to keep going. Tamaz J says, TKR needs to stay out of foul trouble. Man, we saw that today in the first half. But the silver lining of that was seeing Burgess come in, and I'd like to see more Burgess just so he can get comfortable. He's going to be really important at the end of this year and next year, in my opinion. Tamas J says, why doesn't Caleb shoot the open 3? He wasn't wasn't he a decent shooter freshman year? He's a decent shooter, and he's really good in the corner. Really good three-point shooter in the corner, and I would bet his percentage is high. I bet a guy like Cobra could tell me exactly where first is best from. But yeah, Indian Colorado says, "Oh, okay, addressing somebody else." Yeah, Zach Welch says Berg played great in moments. Loved the ability to go get the basket in the post, put the pressure on the opposing defense. He isn't Edie. No one is. But you can tell he works so hard. Yeah, he works very hard. And that's the thing. I don't think there isn't a malaise that I look from anybody on this team. And maybe I'm missing it. I'm trying to think. There isn't one. There isn't a guy on this team that is in the rotation that doesn't work hard. And that's great to see. And I think that's something that shows kind of a Purdue culture. And it will play well as the season goes on because these guys are not going to rest on anything. Even Smith, when he plays a game like this, he's going to go into practice and work his ass off the next day, right? And so I think that's a big deal. I think that's how teams get better during the season. This Purdue team is a lot different than what we've seen in the past years. Like I said multiple times now, that this team, everybody's figuring out their new role. Even the guys that have been here for 3 years, their roles are slightly different because that one big guy that used to be in the middle changed everything on offense and defense. He was such a good enforcer. He was so good at saying, you want to play physical with us? Then I'm going to end you, right? Well, now Purdue's got to get used to the physicality again. And they got to say, okay, we don't have that guy. So somebody's got to be a similar role. And losing Gillis, Gillis going on to Duke, where he doesn't play enough minutes, frustrates the hell out of me because I love Gillis, but they need somebody else to step into that role. And somebody can grow into that during the season, in my opinion. Metal Scholar says in the basketball game, only 8 turnovers, 9 made threes, low turnovers, decent number of threes made, exact opposite from the Penn State game. Yeah, the one thing I'd like to see is more rebounds, but this team, that's really, really hard on this team. But it looks like the rebounds, a lot of the guys are stepping up, so you're seeing guys get 7 boards that are people that I think Purdue fans don't think of as rebounders, and they're doing it. They're doing their thing. So Matt Keller asks, was it just me, or did Penn State and Maryland and Marquette defend pretty much the same way? No, it wasn't just you. And that was why I had such a it's just Purdue handled it better. Here's the thing. Let's look at these 3 games. I'm not a rocket scientist, but look, Purdue's on the road twice and really struggled on the road with that type of pressure. Really, could you say wilted? I think you could in those games. So that's the thing. This team needs to grow up. And it's hard to say when you say, okay, you got 3 juniors that have played a ton of minutes and they still are not dealing well with pressure. That one guy, and I keep talking about him, he was so good at glossing over problems. You did not have to be superhuman as an individual because you had Superman, right? Superman's gone. So now somebody else has to grow into the role. I'm telling you, I said it earlier and I mean it. Somebody's got to kind of like the side of their own blood. And that's literally and figuratively. Or like the taste when you get a bloody nose and it runs into your mouth and you're like, all right. There's 2 ways to handle that, right? One way is to say, oh crap, I'm bleeding. Take me to the doctor, get me stitches. And the other one is to lick it and say, let's go back in the fight, right? So Purdue has been defined by fighters though, as a basketball program. And Painter is a fighter, and Painter hates seeing Purdue get out-toughed. They were absolutely out-toughed in both of those games, Marquette and Penn State. So let's see. So that's about it. That's all I got for you. I think I'm going to call it a day. Great talking to everybody. Like I said, we'll be back 9 o'clock-ish on Monday with a handsome hour. I think it'll be Jay and I. Anish is going to have internet issues where he is. But that's about it. Hope you have a great afternoon. Go enjoy the weather. It's getting nicer in central Indiana. It's going to be nicer tomorrow. Looks beautiful outside, and it's in the 50s, I believe. So have a great day. God bless you. Hammer down. We'll talk to you soon. See ya. Purdue is 8-2.